McFaul Guy, Charles. I don't know. I didn't see this movie, but it's an interesting topic. This came up when I was thinking the other day about we're talking about Russiagate a lot. Everybody's talking about Russiagate, and a lot of people say it started when Flynn went to dinner with Putin. How you doing there in the non-residential library?
I'm doing well. I'm at the residential dining table.
Perfect.
In the corner. Yeah.
Very nice.
I've been going into my books and I've got them scattered all over the residential library, so it's a bit cluttered.
No
Didn't have
problem.
time. Yeah.
No one will hold that against you. But still, it is something that has been, I feeling like we're getting a lot of limited hangout material on Russiagate. They're focusing on the Steele dossier and a lot of stuff like that. But I just asked this simple question of the internets, and it's a series of tubes, so it knows everything. But I asked it, how did Flynn come to be the keynote speaker at that RT dinner? And it doesn't really give us the direct answer, but it did point out some important things, telling us that both Flynn and Putin said they really didn't know each other before this dinner. You actually, it rings true, because even when you just see that photo of them, they don't really look like they're too familiar, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the root cause of this mess is that the United States has allowed for 16 years, or 20 years if you count Biden, in the case of Clinton and Obama, two, in theory, starry-eyed do-gooders to attempt to remake the world in their image of what's right. And, the first time Bill tried this was when he was first-term governor in Arkansas, and he got run out of town, basically. He lost overwhelmingly in the subsequent election. Then he was early 30s with no practical experience. How do you let an early 30-year-old run a government, even as small as Arkansas is? It's a lot to take
Zoran
in.
Mandami, what?
Yeah, exactly. And his Ugandan palace, you saw that?
I did.
He just got married. And then in the case of Obama, I mean, the man can't even build his own grifter mill, his library. There's a great story by Monica Showalter in The American Thinker. Apparently, that project is such a disaster. The locals are pissed off. The construction's way over budget. It's ugly as shit. It's not going to house any physical documents. It's just one big joke.
It's a boondongle, Charles.
Exactly. What did you say?
It's a boondongle.
Oh, boon. Okay, yeah. So it's ridiculous. And so Obama, when he was president, tried this, to remake the world with all his regime change. And regime change is like, it's opening that, letting the genie out of the bottle without knowing whether the genie is a good genie or a devil. And, if we are able to speak in English and write in English and consider America's history under Clinton, under Bush, under Obama, under Biden, these people are worse than dangerous. It's like taking a person who can't stand up and say, why don't you drive that 18-wheeler over to that nursery school? See if anything bad happens. I mean, it's what he did with all these regime change efforts internationally. And then when he hadn't had enough fun doing that, it turns out he set his sights on the United States of America. Regime change in the United States of America. They tried it in 16. They succeeded in 20, and they failed in 24. So in the middle of all this, enter this guy, McFaul. What are the red flags? Another fucking Rhodes Scholar. Give me a break with that Rhodes Scholar, as you would say. It's just, he's a dangerous guy. The United Kingdom has had a long, fractured history with Russia and various incarnations in the Soviet Union. The policy wonks there seem dead set on Project Topple Russia, make Russia an insignificant country, forgetting that the Russian population is, I believe, more than twice the size of the UK population, forgetting that Russia has the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world, forgetting further that the UK is basically an intolerant state at this point. They've abandoned what made them great with John Milton, John Locke, and all those people, the Glorious Revolution that predated our 1776. They were champions of free speech and determined inquiry and debate. No longer. They're locking up people who show up at abortion clinics, who don't say anything and don't have a sign, allegedly for what they think. By standing next to this, you can't do that. And they've locked multiple people up for that.
Thought crimes.
Exactly. And so this is, people, myself included, you can be suspicious of me. I studied in England, but not as a Rhodes Scholar. But these Rhodes Scholars, Pete Buttigieg, for example, turns out he spent something like $80 billion on DEI projects. None of them worked. And this guy is hamming it up around the country, pretending that he's going to be the Democrat candidate in 2028. So you have these people who are easily manipulated. Yes, McFaul is a professor, but and yes, he has a PhD, and you could say that he's got distinguished credentials. But as our ambassador to Russia, he fucked relations up. And
when you and I were talking about this the other day, you got into a very interesting track of kind of tying this to what was going on in Egypt, because McFaul gets in there. He becomes the ambassador in 2012, January 10th, 2012. And it's interesting because Morsi, there's a whole lot about that whole thing with Morsi that we don't know. But this is right around the same time that he's coming in, right?
Right. So with Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood had been banned in Egypt for decades. They allegedly assassinated Sadat, going way back in time. They were allied with Hitler. This is a bad group. And Obama was very pro-Muslim Brotherhood, some allege, and might even be a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood indirectly. A brother in
From
the Muslim
hood.
Brotherhood.
Yeah.
So this idea in Egypt to get Morsi in and have the Muslim Brotherhood be legitimized was a stupid idea and a dangerous idea. But I would guess that Hillary was all in for it. She was then Secretary of State, and she had as her close associate an employee, Abedin, whose mother had founded the Muslim Sisterhood. Right? Jesus, a gigantic bird just landed on my terrace out there. Sorry, distracted me.
That's all right. 100% bird. You ever see that video where they release the bird?
Yeah. So Abedin, on I think it was June 29th, 2012, got special dispensation to hold 4 jobs. She was working at the State Department. She was working for Teneo. She was working for the Clinton Foundation, and she was working for the Clinton family personally. On the 30th, Morsi was proclaimed the victor, I think, in the election, and gave a speech in Arabic where he said his primary objective in his presidency, or whatever the title was, would be to free the blind sheikh. And there ensued a huge hue and cry because Morsi had by that time, I believe, accepted, because his number 2 worked for the Clinton Foundation, had accepted to speak as the keynote speaker at the Clinton Global Initiative, Grifter Initiative, in 2012. So, if he was going to come to New York and say in a speech at the CGI that he wanted to free the blind sheikh, that wouldn't have gone over too well in the 2012 campaign, particularly in New York City. So a frantic effort was made to convince him to tone it down a bit. And I think to distract from that, the efforts to buy back the Stinger missiles that it is alleged Ambassador Stevens, there were competing plans to do it. Hillary thought she could buy them back more cheaply, but there were these missiles flying around, and people were terrified what might happen with them. So the Benghazi thing happened. And the furor around that distracted people at the time of the Clinton Global Initiative.
So now, let's just hang on that for a second, because I remember that there was a detail where Lee Stranahan was adamant, and he had evidence of this, it was correct, that this video, The Innocence of Muslims, that played on the news in Egypt.
Right, which doesn't happen without government approval.
Yeah, there's something weird going on here between Benghazi, the Clintons, that video. So as far as the repurchasing of the missiles, is that something that they have admitted to, or how do we know that? This is telling us Egypt bans YouTube over the innocence of Muslims.
Right. Yeah. So the whole various people, various investigative journalists have made those claims. I don't have them in front of me, so I can't cite them chapter and verse. But the one thing that's certain, Chuck Grassley is the one who drew attention to Umar Abedin having these 4 jobs. And I'm sorry, when you work in government, you should have 1 job. That's it. Government. Public service. You shouldn't be working for Teneo. You shouldn't be working for the Clinton Foundation, and you shouldn't be working on the Clinton family payroll. It's just ridiculous. Who approved that and why? Obama had to approve that, probably. So what was really going on with all this? Why was Obama so interested in regime change? Why were the Clintons so interested? Well, there's a diabolical private equity firm whose name I can't remember now, that Sid Blumenthal worked for at the time. Peter Schweitzer identified it. And it's a firm whose specialty is backing insurgent governments to challenge the existing government, with the idea being that once the insurgent government gains power, that they'll give deals to the private equity firm. I mean, that to me sounds like hopelessly corrupt, and sounds like private individuals are conducting American foreign policy and making money off of it. That's not something that we should allow in our country. And we shouldn't be working with allies that allow it in their countries. But it seems that we do allow it. And it flourished in the Obama years. It flourished in the Reagan years. It flourished in the Bush years. And here's the money angle to it. Everybody focuses on Nancy Pelosi making money and others making money in the stock market. If you want to make big money, you will take on, first of all, you'll be a short seller, meaning that you hope to make money when the value of something that you're tracking goes down, because you're betting that it does go down. So if you know chaos is coming, and that's going to cause interest rates in the country that's the target of the chaos to rise, because people will fear putting money in the country, and they'll demand higher tribute in the form of interest, you ally yourself with a firm capable of shorting the debt of a country. Because countries that go bust, their debt can go to be worth a penny from a dollar.
That's the George Soros method.
And not just Soros. There are others who do that. Yes. And so this confluence is one. I have actually never shorted a stock in my life, or a security in my life, but it takes a lot of financial sophistication to put these pieces together. And it seems that our own investigative bodies, whether it's the FBI or other ones, by design, they get to a project like this and say, we're not going to touch that. We're going to put this evidence over here in a locked room. We'll get somebody who can't balance his or her checkbook to study this. That'll take them till they die. And we're never going to figure it out. But that, I think, is what happened, wittingly or unwittingly, particularly under the Obama and Biden years and Clinton years. And people made a lot of money and didn't pay taxes on it. And a lot of lives, Hillary's attitude about Gaddafi, what did she say about him?
We saw he died.
Yeah. I mean, that is somebody who, after he died, to say something like that, that's the kind of shit you would expect our friend on the cardboard box, Methuselah, to babble out on meth. It's not what the Secretary of State should have as an official response to the death of a world leader. And it projects the attitude that, when I get in power, fear me.
Well, it's just psychopathic. I mean, she's
right.
laughing about somebody dying and the subsequent destabilization of the whole place. One more thing real quick here, Charles, that I think lends credence to this. ABC News is fact-checking Trump, where they say he repeats a myth about Benghazi. And I'm sure it's not a myth. They love to say that. He said that Hillary Clinton is a world-class liar. And this, I think, was talking about what she did with it. He says what she did with Ambassador Stevens was absolutely horrible. He was left helpless while Hillary Clinton slept in her bed. I think this is where he was talking about she was trying to do something with these missiles to move them through, right? Libya? What? They had some bigger plan here. This is what I mean by limited hangout. We barely know about what they were up to.
Well, it's called JARCH Capital, JARCH. I just remember the name. And what a stupid name to begin with. But anyway, what they were trying to do is that there were various insurgent movements that wanted to topple Gaddafi. And under international law, it was explained to me that if there's a way that an insurgent group can attain legitimacy in the eyes of the major powers, and once you attain that legitimacy, if you do rise to power, in the case of Libya, you control a vast amount of wealth in their sovereign wealth fund. Libya has been rich for a long time with a small population it doesn't really have to support. And so there's a gigantic pool of money available. In addition, they own various businesses, the Libyan government, in Europe. There's some big, I think, energy trading firm in maybe Holland or something like that. And so the game plan there was to back the insurgent group and reap the spoils when that insurgent group attains power, and you have to manage the country for it because they can't manage it. So that, I think, is some of what was going on. But you think back to these emails on Hillary. You know, there's an email in the Podesta WikiLeaks where she's asking, "Oh, there's a cabinet meeting. Do I have to go to? Am I supposed to go to it?" I mean, anybody who I think she was fourth or fifth in the line of succession to be president in the advent of some disaster happening. You're telling me why would she ask the question, am I supposed to go to a cabinet meeting? I mean, that just tells you how stupid she is. And that she and many of these other people are just pieces on a chessboard. You know, what they say they want to do may or may not happen. We have to figure out who is pulling the strings, you know, around the game, because clearly Hillary Clinton. I mean, I have had the misfortune of having to try to read her books. They're just formulaic, clearly written by a ghostwriter. You know, let's assemble 200 pithy incidents in the strange and wonderful life of the person who can do no wrong, and every one of these incidents. You know, I met with this poor farmer in Mozambique and helped their family get into the watermelon business. I mean, it's just ridiculous stuff that she touts. In a track record with no success in her Senate career, what did she do? She backed the Iraq War. Okay? I mean, even people on the right now are saying, understand that was a disaster. We're persona non grata in Iraq. Iraq just gave a big, I think, energy contract or entered into a big energy deal with China. How many lives did we lose of our own? How many people were wounded in Iraq? How much money did that cost us? How much did it cost our prestige? And Hillary Clinton, you know, her claim to fame is she sided with the Republicans to get into that war. Did she pass any significant legislation? No, she probably got a post office named after somebody, but she did nothing in the Senate. What did she accomplish as Secretary of State? She pressed the overcharge button, the reset button, she said, mistranslated, misinformation, I guess, and went down a path of trying to cozy up with Russia, transferring some of our important military tech and other technology to Russia via Skolkovo, only to find us at loggerheads by the time before she left as Secretary of State, with McFaul in there, poisoning relations between. It's fair to say that McFaul was, you know, run out of Russia.
Well, let's touch on that a bit, because here he is meeting with Zelensky, and he was really laying the groundwork, and we also have to keep in mind, they expected Hillary Clinton to be in there in 2016, and this whole destroy Russia via creating a war in Ukraine plan got delayed by several years because of Trump. But McFaul seemed to be laying that groundwork. And, the other thing that you were bringing up when we were discussing it the other day was how this all worked in with that band Pussy Riot. And remember, it was reported in the news over here as like, oh, this is a horrible suppression of free speech. But I think from the Russian point of view, these were subversive groups being stoked by the United States, right?
Something the United States has long done. I mean, we took the position, obviously I wasn't even born when this started, but we took the position that communism posed an existential threat to the United States and its allies, and that it was our moral duty to go around the world and topple communist regimes. That was our viewpoint. Another approach would have been to say, communism is ultimately going to fail. It's failed everywhere it's been tried. So we have 335 million people out of 8 billion. We're not responsible for 7.6 billion other people. And if a given nation, a large nation like China, wants to go down a track internally of destroying itself with communism and never amounting to anything, so be it. Leave them alone. Don't have relations with them. Maybe Nixon made a big mistake, opening up relations with China. I mean, after all, we are the beneficiary in the United States and around the world. Here in Penang is one example of many brave people who fled the waste in China. And I hear from local people here, I ask them about their history. And to a person, most of the Chinese origin people left China because you couldn't even get a dirt sandwich there. We're talking about in the 1800s. I mean, it was really, really poor, nothing going on. So rather than pursue the policies we did pursue at tremendous economic cost to us, maybe we would have been a lot better off just saying no communism inside the territory where we are. And similarly, Russia has every right. The Russian government has every right to self-determination. That's enshrined in the UN Charter. And I think in some ways, Putin was a visionary when it comes to foundations, because how many shows have we done about crooked foundations and what damage they can do? Russia saw through this, Putin saw through it and said, you know what? No foreign foundations inside Russia. And people say, oh, that's outrageous. He's clamping down. No, USAID was a front for democratic donors to enrich themselves, in theory, promoting progressive ideas, but in practice, looting the treasury. How long did we let that shit go on for decades? And there's some idiot going around now saying that USAID saved 90 million lives. It sounds like the kind of press release. He's a moron. He should stick to singing.
He said something about it.
He should stick to singing. I don't even like the music. but the thing is, that's like a press release out of the Clinton Global Initiative. You go to a meeting where the principle of the meeting is that you have to make a commitment to action. It's like waking up in the morning and saying, today I'm going to get out of bed. And then eventually I might do something. I mean, it's a ridiculous idea. And to say in one meeting of 2 days or 3 days that you secured, billions of dollars of commitments and action. So fucking what? I mean, audit every one of them. How many of those commitments to action translated into business deals that were concocted in the invitation-only forum where they controlled access and they controlled what people did? How many of those meetings created enormous, illegal private gain for the attendees? Most of them. And similarly, this USAID, a calculation that you save those lives. Show me the math, Bono. As a guess, Bono never took a math course.
Well, Charles, we need to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum here. People are going to be able to join us on subscribestar.com and patreon.com. crowdsource the truth, also on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and people who follow me on X can also subscribe there at JG_CSTT. I just wanted to point out this detail that we didn't zero in on the other day, but McFaul arrives there January 10th, 2012, and that band Pussy Riot does their first ever performance on January 20th, 2012.
Wow.
And didn't Putin and McFaul, they had a pretty rough kind of relationship where I think Putin just basically straight up accused him of like basically doing all this stuff. And then McFaul wrote this thing for Politico where he says Putin hazed me and he was stalked, harassed, and surveilled by Kremlin stooges. But it's basically because Putin said, hey, this guy is trying to basically do regime change here in Russia. And I mean, they went to McDonald's, he's telling us, Charles. Maybe he was having a conversation with those same guys who said McDonald's in Russia, knowing how to change the world. But we'll be right back in just a minute. We'll talk about all of this stuff. Stay with us, everybody.